So, we had some technical difficulties with our small groups last night. We tried to call everybody who gave us their email on Google Hangouts, but only like 2 or 3 people ended up answering the call. So we tried a few more times and still the same people were answering the call. So we decided to take everyone that sent their email and make a FaceTime group, and then we called on FaceTime, and a few more people answered, but still not everybody answered and not everybody said they got the call. So I thought I'd just make a quick little video to give a summary of what our small group was about last night, even though we kind of cut it short then too. We're going to try to figure something different out for our future small groups. But the past few times we've had small groups, or whatever you want to call this that we're doing, we've talked about doubt. The first week we talked about how we're not alone in our questions. We talked about Psalm 88 and Psalm 22, I believe. Yeah, 22. Where Jesus used that scripture actually when he was on the cross, and he quoted the psalm that says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And we talked about how even Jesus had questions and concerns about what God was doing. And the psalmist, whoever wrote Psalm 88, had all these horrible things going on in their life, and they're asking God, like, why have you allowed this to happen to me? I don't understand. And then last week we talked about Gideon and Judges chapter 6, and how he had so many questions for God, and even like asking God to prove himself, basically, like, okay, an angel just appeared before me. Like, I feel like if an angel appeared before me, I'd just be like, alright, I believe it. But he asked God he laid a blanket out and asked for God to make the ground wet and the blanket dry. And he said, if I wake up the next morning and that has happened, then I will believe that it's you speaking to me, God. And God did that. And then he reversed it and said, okay, God, I want the ground to be wet and the blanket to be dry. I don't know if I just said that. Whatever I just said, the opposite of whatever I just said. And God did it again the next day. And so we talked about how we're not alone in our questions, and how God doesn't shame us for our questions. And last night, the point which we talked about the story of Job, the entire book of the Bible. And if you don't know that story, basically it starts out talking about how Job is a righteous man, how he was upright, devout. He would even make sacrifices for sins he didn't commit. He'd make sacrifices for his children, just to cover all his bases and make sure everything was right with God. Everyone around him was right with God. So Satan goes to God and says, I think I can get Job to curse you and deny that you're God. And God's like, he's not going to do that, but okay. So Satan comes in, kills all of Job's children. I think he had 10 children. Kills all his children. Kills all his livestock. Everything. That's like basically all his monetary goods. All of everything he owned was taken away from him. All his livestock are killed. All his servants are killed. And then Job still doesn't curse God. And Satan goes back to God after he's taken everything away from Job and says, alright, that didn't really work, but let me take it a step farther. And God's like, okay, but he's not going to curse me. And then Satan gives Job a horrible skin disease. It's like super painful. He has like, I don't know, blisters, boils, whatever, popping up all over his body. The Bible talks about how he's like taking broken plates and cups and just scraping his skin, and disgusting. And even after that, Job's wife is like, Job, just curse God and die. Like, God doesn't care about you. Look what he's doing to you. He wants you dead. So just curse him and die. And Job still refuses. And then Job's best friends come to him and are saying things like, it's because of your sin that God's doing this to you. This is your fault. Your kids deserved it too. They were sinners. God killed them. God has a plan throughout all this. He's just doing this, and he has a reason to be doing it to you. You need to be thankful because God is disciplining you. But that was not true at all. Obviously, clearly, the scripture even tells us that it was Satan causing these things to happen to Job, not God. And then eventually in the book of Job, Job asks God questions like, I haven't sinned against you, God. I don't understand what you're doing. Why is this happening to me? And God responds to Job, but he doesn't respond in the way that Job asks. Like, God, why are you doing this? That wasn't what God responded and said. Instead, he starts talking about all the things he's done. He shows Job the world, all of his creation. You know, the Bible talks about how he takes care of the lilies in the field. He takes care of the birds that fly in the air. And God is just showing him this big, massive picture of all this. And when God does that, he's not answering Job's question. Job wanted to know why so many terrible, bad things are happening to him. But God just answered by showing Job who he was. All the things he's done, all the things he's created, all the things he's taken care of. He just says, I'm the creator of everything. I'm bigger, greater, more powerful, and kinder than you could ever imagine. And he's showing Job that Job is so small compared to God and compared to everything he's created and everything he's done. And he didn't get the answer he was looking for, but he did get an encounter with the creator of the universe. So the main point of our lesson that we talked about last night was that in Job's story, we learn a third important thing about our questions and our doubts is that our questions don't always get answered. You might have questions about things going on right now in the world, crazy times we're in. And the reality is we might not get the exact answer we're looking for. But we can be sensitive and kind to each other as we may have questions and may have doubts, especially in this time. But let me read a final scripture. I'm trying to keep this short because nobody wants to watch this boring video with me. I'd much rather be talking face to face with y'all. It's so much more fun that way. But it's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. It's one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible. It says, okay, well, the internet's not working. But it says that we know that God works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Oh, here it is. Okay, it says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So, God doesn't always take away the pain and suffering that we experience. And he didn't do that with Job either. But this verse tells us that it's not necessarily saying that our lives are going to have this fairy tale happy ending like the end of Disney movies or our favorite sitcoms. But when we experience pain, when we experience heartache, the hard truth is that our questions don't always get answered, but God can redeem the things that we've suffered from or lost. And I think that is how I will end this. I'm sorry to everyone who tried to participate and wasn't able to last night. It was not intentional or personal, and I hate that it happened that way, but I think we're going to try a different format this next week. So I don't have the answer to why that didn't work. Speaking of not having the answer to questions, some people are messaging, asking, I'm like, sorry, I don't know. But even when we don't have the answer to every question, we can still have faith in God as our Redeemer. And that's good news. God ultimately redeemed Job. He ultimately restored everything that Satan had taken away from him. He gave him new children. He gave him livestock. He healed his body. He restored everything that the enemy had taken and more. And no, that doesn't make Job's situation less painful. He still experienced the pain and suffering of losing children, of losing sons and daughters and all his animals, everything he had, but God restored it. And God can restore anything that the enemy has taken from you, or the sufferings and losses that you have faced. And we have to know that God is our Redeemer, and He is alive, and He is redeeming things even today. So I look forward to talking with y'all next week.